Having masala chai means milk and
sugar. Somebody is looking for weight loss, and if he's having tea, it's not going to really help.
I'm going to go back and start drinking green tea now. You went on to do a tea blending courses. Were they tough?
They are. I mean,
Let me stop. How much tea did you have to drink
I did have to drink a lot of tea.
from tea culture of the world? You have moved to Boba Cat bubble tea.
Yes, it's just that full quotient to carry a boba.
I find it much too sweet.
Me too.
So, doctor, then briefly homemaker, and then tea entrepreneur. How did your family respond?
There was a huge disappointment when I didn't get that support. My mother said, we gave you a degree, we spent so much on your education, and now you're going to sell tea?
You are venturing into industries that are very new for India. Where do you get the money?
Raising money is still a big challenge.
Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining this episode of Beyond Pink. Beyond Pink is about women leading a new way of life in India. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce a woman who is definitely leading a new way of life in India because she is a tea entrepreneur. She founded the brand Tea Culture of the World, and now, having exited very well, she is starting another brand called Boba Cat, which is about bubble tea. That's not all. In an earlier life, she was actually a doctor. So, how did Rupali Ambegaonkar go from being a doctor to a tea entrepreneur? This is her story. Let's start with tea culture of the world. That was my curiosity about you. The irony is, we are a tea drinking nation. But in terms of exotic teas, we're not really there, are we? And then you start an exotic tea company. So,
I was not drinking the traditional milk tea at all, and I was never fascinated by it, never attracted to it. And in my late 20s, came to know that I had extremely high cholesterol, which was genetic.
oh no.
And though, in spite of having, I was very skinny, and in spite of having like a good lifestyle and everything, I was a runner since school days. I still had that problem. Now, when I start statins, say at the age of 28, they come with their own side effects.
Yeah.
And so that was not my preferred go-to option. So I started looking at alternatives that, I could naturally bring this or address this genetic condition that I was exposed to now. So, I started having garlic and bottle gourd and so many other things that, people tell you, ye karenge, cinnamon and this and that. And then during that year also, we had gone to China and someone had gifted me this tea box. One of our family friends who lived there had given me this Tigwine tea, which I initially didn't have because tea as a thing only was not so attractive or something like that to me. It was a very beautiful pack. The tea was packed very well. So that was also appealing. And then I had the tea and I don't know, I just loved it. I just loved it. And every day I would have it, and I could see remarkable results also. My cholesterol started coming down naturally.
Okay.
I lost some weight. Not that I was overweight, but I had this little postpartum weight, and so that came down. And I overall also felt healthier. But bringing the tea every time from China was not possible. In this, I'm talking about like 2009 and 10. It was not so easy. So I was relying on a lot of friends, families who traveled to China, and they bought me this tea pack, and every time it would be different brand, but you took what you got. And nobody takes money for tea, right? I mean, they'll bring you a chai ka dabba and they're not going to charge you. So, I'd exhausted all my resources of free tea, and I felt embarrassed to ask for it. And tea is a habit. You're drinking every day. So you need to replenish it every week, month. I said, why don't I start this? Why do I had no clue of what the giants sitting in the tea business are and what they're doing and how the market is. And I just thought, okay, well, I will just get this tea and I will sell it myself so that at least I have enough supply of this whole thing. Then I traveled to China to set up my supply chain, and I found there's so much to tea than my limited understanding, and so many flavors. And that's how I decided that I will bring this and bring that awareness and help people also enjoy the benefits that I was enjoying.
So did you have to study this?
Yes, and then later on, when I found out that tea is such a wide subject, it's extensive. There's so much more to tea than just what we see or are exposed to. And I thought that if I have to sell great tea, I also need to be the authority in this subject. I need to know the quality. I need to know the varieties or the subtle nuances that separate one leaf from the other, and that prompted me. And as a person also, I like to be thorough, so it prompted me to take various degrees. So though there are tea degrees in India, I felt that they are more like the agriculture part of tea as a crop, but not really courses which help you market tea well or understand well or blend different flavors. And back in the day, like 2009, the coffee culture was also not that great. That today we have courses for baristas and sommeliers, and it was not that evolved. So then I decided that I have to study this subject extensively. So I did various courses, but one that helped me was the one I did from Canada. And also for me, a Westerner's perspective on tea was very important, because though we are a tea producing country, we were really obsessed with our own version of the black tea.
Mainly Assam, right?
Assam tea.
Yeah.
Even the best of the Darjeeling tea was just getting exported, and our people were not really enjoying a good cup of a Darjeeling tea. They just didn't know how to even brew it. So I felt that my understanding through the Western sense of tea elevated my entire understanding of tea as a third party perspective.
And what is the Western sense of tea?
There were different cultures which were evolved around the world. Like the English have their own sense of tea. The Egyptians have their own sense of tea. The Middle Easterns have their own sense of tea. The Chinese drink tea in a particular way. The Japanese are drinking tea in a particular way. And when you travel to these countries, they are having tea from various other countries too. But when I was traveling in India, we were very unilateral in our dimension of having the same black tea. Okay, it is different when you have black tea with milk in the north or the south, and it varies in taste.
But it's the same. It's masala chai
of tea. And that's how, there were so many blended teas around the world, different fruits, herbs, healthier options were available, but we somehow were blindsided, So I thought that this opened my eyes to the various varieties of tea that are available in the world today, and different cultures that are evolving. And that's how tea culture of the world, it gives you, different flavors and cultures around the world in that single pot.
Were you sourcing only from overseas, or were you sourcing in India as well?
So what I did was I bought the best of the Chinese teas, Japanese teas, best of the Indian teas also to the Indian consumer. Our best teas were getting exported. So I realized that, a very good Darjeeling is not really accessible to the person who wants to have it. He doesn't know also there were different estates from around Darjeeling and Assam, but they didn't sell. Today they have websites of their own. There is awareness, Mackay Bari, Mukkal Bari, Margaret's Hope. There are many, many estates around the world and around India. And today I think they also are very aware of how to sell the tea. But back in the day they weren't. So if sitting in my house, I wanted to find a very good Darjeeling tea, it was impossible. So what we did was we sourced these different estate teas, their best flush and all of that, and made it available in our stores to the consumer who wanted it.
And did consumers want it?
if I see the consumer back then, yes, they came, we had to explain them what are these different teas. Some people thought this was masalas, or, there's all sorts of expressions that people would, oh, ye chai hai, so there was a lot of that. But today, if I see the consumers coming, they exactly know what they want. They are okay to sample a few things here and there and elevate their experience. But they'll tell you they want a Darjeeling first flush, they want a second flush, and then so they tell you that they like the rose tea or they like a mint tea or.
Does tea have medicinal properties also?
Yes, definitely. Tea over a period of time does boost your metabolism.
Okay.
So you feel more energetic and lively, and you tend to lose weight also. But again, it has to be balanced with your lifestyle. It's not like you're having a cup of green tea or oolong tea every day and eating junk food. Everything has to be balanced and married perfectly with the overall lifestyle.
Somebody in the family had a heart condition, and the doctor suggested that she should drink 4 cups of green tea a day, and the blockage would naturally open up. And he said, surgery is not the way out. This is a more natural and less invasive way of managing this. Just have green tea all day long, which sounded really radical. And I think there's some resistance to using these very subtle and long-term mechanisms towards healing. One just wants that quick fix.
Instant fix. When you're having green tea 4 times, 5 times, most of the times it will be post your meal. So any hot water post your meal also helps you digest the food faster, right? And then the fat accumulation from that is also lesser. So tea plus hot water plus the overall lifestyle will definitely help.
I mean, there is a habit of drinking coffee after a meal, right?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe to aid in digestion. Yeah. So you're saying Indians have started going beyond masala chai.
Definitely.
Yeah, which is good to know, because having masala chai means milk and sugar. And is green tea healthier than black tea?
No, not really. Actually, it's the same leaf processed differently. That's why, say, black tea has the potential to awaken you, instantly make you alert. Whereas green tea does not have, because they're processed in different ways. But whereas because green tea is not processed at all, there is a lot of theanine in that, epigallocatechin galates are there. So they make you younger, they make the metabolisms higher. So there are different benefits. It's not one versus the other.
I'm going to go back and start drinking green tea now. So did your knowledge of medicine in any way help you in
it did.
blending?
Yes, it did. For example, somebody is looking for weight loss, and if he's having a Darjeeling tea, not going to really help.
Okay.
So different teas have different qualities. So I think I could understand that better. Use different herbs, fruits, spices in different ways, and we could elevate their potential and maximize their potential a little better because of my understanding of medicine,
biology,
and body.
And the body. You went on to do these tea blending courses. Were they tough?
They are. I mean, you have to put your heart and soul into whatever it takes.
Let me stop. How much tea did you have to drink?
I did have to drink a lot of tea, but there is a thing called spittoon, which is there,
yes.
But they were good teas, so I rarely spit. I don't like to spit anything out, so they were good teas, and but yes, there was intense practice because you have to, in one sip, tell the high altitude, low altitude region, bad leaf, good leaf, good flavor, bad flavor, everything you have to tell. And it's very complicated. Until today, I think India struggles with formalized tea grading systems. So
we don't have?
We do have, but they're very subjective.
So what do you mean they're subjective?
I mean, every state has their tea grading system.
Okay.
it is left up to the state to grade its tea and provide a certification and all. There's no body as such wherein there's a governing system, or globally.
Globally, there's no body. So, as an individual, how do you compete with, purchasing done by corporations? Like, how do you compete with, say, Lipton? Lipton green tea is what we always had. When we spoke of green tea, it was Lipton green tea.
We as a company are very boutique, and we worked with those small producers. We worked with boutique tea estates because you want a certain quality. And sometimes I feel, I'm not saying that Lipton will be selling bad tea, but it is designed for them, right? The quality that they want, or the volume that they want. So everything works backwards from their volumes. For us, we wanted somebody who's producing less but giving eye to detail. The size of the leaf is very important for us. The color of the liquor is very important. And so many times in our company, like, there would be people who would come, oh, but last time it tasted like that, We would say, but tea is a crop, and it is subject to climate changes or soil changes or rainfall, and we subscribe to that change. We are not going to, like, I don't have a massive blending team who will make sure that they'll make alterations and flavor alterations, and they will try to give you the same cup every day, which means also compromising somewhere, mixing different leaves and matching all of that, which is okay in many sense because people want the same thing in their cup. But we are a very boutique brand, and we embrace that subtle nuances, work with small growers, encourage them to produce certain types of tea. We pay that, we are fair trade certified. We want to make sure that, all our farmers and all the labor is getting a fair share for their labor. So all of that makes it easier, because these people also share the same ethos like us.
So, doctor, then briefly homemaker, and then tea entrepreneur. So how did your family respond to this trajectory?
No, I think our family went through a big upheaval with this change. My mother said, okay, agar tula doctor banवला, एवढं शिकवलं आणि तू चहा विकणार. In this, well, I translated in English that, we gave you a degree, we spent so much on your education, and now you're going to sell tea? It was difficult to accept this change. I really feel that when a man is ambitious, the entire house and the ecosystem, supports his ambition. You all change your trajectory in a way that is, supporting him or elevating him. But very rarely a woman gets that. If the woman is ambitious, times are changing now. But I feel that it's still tough when a woman is ambitious, or not even ambitious, but maybe wants to do something or make her own choices. The runway is not the same.
And something so exotic as what you chose, which probably nobody else in the family even understood what you were thinking about.
Tough.
And how do you overcome that?
Staying firm and true to yourself. Because ultimately this is your one life, that what you want to do with it, what will make you happy with it. And if you're happy, you can make others happy. And if I was sad and I give up everything, and then what can I give the relationship to? So I feel that I was just true to myself, and it came with its own sets of challenges.
When they say entrepreneurs is a lonely journey, your case,
it is.
It's absolutely, it's literal, not metaphorical.
No, it is a very lonely journey.
What was your challenge in starting this tea culture of the world?
2011 to 2014, I was failing miserably. Okay? Because the market wasn't there, and there was a lot of education required. I didn't know everything, and I was losing money. And everybody, in the family also was telling me, like, we come from a Maharashtrian family, so everybody kept telling me, oh no, business is not our thing, you should not even think about it. Or, people would tell me, you should be happy you tried. You know? So
very patronizing.
I know,
Ah.
so you gave it your all and it's okay, you failed, no big deal, so you don't know what is real. You
Yeah.
believe in you and you want to keep going, and this is not the end for you. And then you have all these people telling you the same thing in different formats. So there was a lot of self-doubt. Is this because I am not accepting my failure, or there is merit to this and you should continue? So that was my darkest period as a person.
And what swung you this way or that way?
If I go forward, I didn't know my future, so it was dark. If I turn back, it is still dark. What do I turn back and do? What in life?
The Tina factor. There is no alternative.
Yes, there was, to me, there was no alternative. So I had to keep going forward because I knew for sure I didn't know what lies ahead, but I knew what lies behind, which I didn't want.
It's very lonely, this path that you have chalked out for yourself. So what have you given up to gain this?
So I feel any life today has 4 burners. That's your health, your career, your family, and your friends. So at different points,
let me repeat that: your health, your family, your career, and your friends.
Okay, so these are 4 tips of a square, and you're standing in the middle, and you're always balancing those. At some points, it's going to tip. If you choose career, then these 3 are going to tip. And so I feel to be successful, you have to balance 2. But to be really, really successful, you have to balance 3.
Okay.
So at one point, something or the other suffers. So if you ask me, in my 30s, I did spend a lot of time with my family and work and friends. Health was a little on the backseat at that time, though I did, but I didn't prioritize. If it was a late night with friends, I did manage that and got up in the morning, showed up to work. I was there for my daughter and, family and everything. Today, if you ask me, it's my friendships who take a back burner. I have very few friends and I like to spend quality time with them, but I am not available for everybody. And, so it does take a backseat. So I think at different stages of your life, you are managing something among these 4 things. Today, health is my top priority. I devote a lot of time to my health and hobbies. Work is one thing which I enjoy truly. And your family is there. But my daughter is out in the university, so it's not as demanding as when I was in my 30s. So maybe friends and family is something which is on a lighter note right now, and career and health are at a, peak where I'm focusing my time and energy on. So I think, that it's the art of balancing these 4 things.
What are the mistakes that you made at that time? Are there too many to count?
Yeah, too many. So I think mistakes are not saying no too early.
What does that mean?
When you're working, you have to make tough calls. And you have to say no to a lot of things to be able to make space for the right things or the right people. You have to say no to the wrong people. But I think I didn't have it in me to, firmly say, no, you're not working for me. Oh, this is not working for me. Or I just didn't say no enough. Or sometimes you took on too much work, which I couldn't do. So I couldn't say no to my, so much work, or I couldn't say no to my family, I couldn't say no to my friends, and be firm about that no and accept it, that it's okay to say no. I won't do this, I won't be present here. I think
not many women are inherently capable of saying no. We are wired to always
say yes. So that, I think, was a huge mistake in the past. Looking back, I felt feel that I could have saved myself a lot of trouble if I was firmly saying no. So that's one. And then, some choices you make, some people you trust, and
ends up badly.
yes, sometimes people don't show their true colors too quickly, or you're not, you're not reading it too well. But it's part and parcel. You're meeting hundreds of people, so some will work for you, some will not work for you. But yes, the art of understanding people and learning from your mistakes is something that I look back and I've made those changes.
So, what are the chief learnings that you have been able to pass on?
I think there's no shortcut to success. So, passion, supported with persistence, perseverance, is very important. Many people like I was never on the verge of giving up, but there were people who would tell me that it's okay and this and that. Listen to yourself. I keep telling so many people whom I meet is like that inner voice can never fail you. So just listen to yourself and prioritize, and don't try to do too many things too quickly.
And then that's when you earn trust.
Yes. And think about longevity. Like today, I feel great that, the flavors which I designed, say 15 years back, are still people are enjoying, and there's longevity to it because it has come from a space of knowledge, deeper understanding. I didn't just put together something and then, it'll last 1-2 years and then it's another trend comes up.
What are those flavors? Some of them.
So one of them is our top seller has till today is Flowery Bouquet.
Okay.
And for me, tea blending was not just about putting herbs together or flowers together. For me, it was always memory of some experience that I've had, or some engagement, or some people whom I knew and have had an impact on me. So Flowery Bouquet was a tea that I designed for one of my friend's sister who passed away very young, and I had never met her. But the stories that my friend would tell about the sister and the impact, or generally a small and beautiful life, I felt was like a rose, that it was full bloom, and how the rose withers. And then she had hibiscus was her favorite plant, and this sweet lingering aftertaste that she left on people in her brief life. And I thought, I was so inspired by her story that I felt I have to pack this in the tea. And Flowery Bouquet is for that memory of the person. So it has like the first notice of the flower, of engaging with her, and then there is hibiscus, which was little sour, and just her personality. And also she loved hibiscus as a flower. And then there is licorice, which gives that sweet aftertaste that after having that you feel, wow, what a life. That kind of feeling I wanted to. Until today, nobody knows the story, but till today, that is our top tea.
So it has touched a heart.
Yes.
It's touched hearts.
Yes.
Now, after talking to you, maybe my opinion has changed, but to this day, I just go home, put leaves in water and drink that. And suddenly you make tea blending sound so romantic. Such a human activity to create something that has a lingering memory. So, as a woman, did you have an advantage or a disadvantage in starting a venture?
It's easier to get a meeting as a woman, but it's difficult to make a deeper connection as a woman. If you are going to meet a man for a meeting, you'll get the meeting. I don't know. I can't say whether men get the meeting or what, but I feel it's a little quicker for a woman to get a meeting. So in that sense, it's an advantage. The disadvantage is that once you get the meeting, and you still have to maintain those boundaries, which man can chill over a smoke, he can go meet, even if it's just client vendor relationship, he could go out for drinks, and I can never do that, because then sometimes the boundaries could blur also. So you always have to maintain those boundaries, so you can't make deeper casual connections that can go beyond work. Could be misread. So you always have to be mindful of those boundaries. So yes, a disadvantage in many ways also.
And you employ a lot of women?
Yes, I do. Because I think women are far more loyal, they're far more dedicated, they have fine eye to detail, and they're far, I mean, I don't want to make any biases here, but for me, I feel they're more productive.
Okay.
Though they come with their set of breaks, they'll go on a pregnancy, maternity leave, or sometimes the child has education and, 12th hai, 10th hai. You have to adjust to that. But they are also aware that they are going to take these breaks or they are not going to be able to. But I feel like, you need to support them, because with this, otherwise creeps in a lot of insecurity that they have to go through while they're on the maternity leave, that what do I go back to? Or, when I go back to office, will I have the same responsibilities? Or, it's been like 3 months, 4 months, and still she's nursing. She's going through a lot of hormonal changes herself. And I think this is the last thing she should worry about. So I like to support women in these things. So in many ways, I am myself not gender neutral. So I can't expect gender neutrality from others too.
And how does your family now feel?
Very happy.
Happy ending.
Yes.
Proud of you.
Yes.
That's amazing. So how does it feel now that you are from retail product, you have moved to a service product, right?
Yes.
Boba Cat is the
QSR.
And Boba Cat is bubble tea.
Yes.
And how does the transition feel? Suddenly you are now in a service industry.
So I'm loving the service industry, frankly. And for me, it's a challenge. Newer TG that I'm talking to. For tea culture, I was talking to people, all our marketing, and our target audience was 30 to 50. And now it's all youth. It's 13 to 28. So I'm also learning new language, lingos, or, the acronyms that are there. And, our marketing is to that TG. So I'm finding it really engaging and challenging at the same time, but having fun. Also, quick service is very exciting. Every day you have to have innovation. You have to move forward. There are so many things happening and you have to elevate your game. There's no one day to dip down. Like today you're having a bad day. Retail, I think, is forgiving because your shelf life is of 12 months. Okay, if the product is not moving, you'll think about it 6-8 months later. But you can't underperform even one single day. So that's the fun of it. And I think talking to a younger audience and a different set of audience is the fun that I'm having. So I'm also feeling a lot challenged. How am I going to, be able to crack this? And so I'm waiting to watch myself.
I'm seeing a pattern here that you are venturing into industries that are very new for India. Was that just on its own it happened, or was that by design, or you didn't even think about it?
I didn't even think about it. Actually, it just happened by chance. After selling Tea Culture of the World, I was looking to take a smaller sabbatical and figuring out what I want to do next. But then, I got this opportunity to set up a bubble tea shop. And I thought, okay, let me give this a shot. I don't think it will be that demanding. And anyways, I don't want to take up something demanding. And I will try my level best and see how this goes. But it's doing very well today. We have 16 stores in the country, a lineup of 20 new stores. And now I'm thinking, what was I doing in retail? I should have been in QSR all this while.
So are you temperamentally more attuned to the service industry?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
that's
so.
where you
yes,
enjoy life more.
Yes.
If we move to your personal life, maybe just talk about that, because I know you've had a very checkered kind of life, and all those years that you devoted to your daughter's health. She was going through some severe health issues when she was born. Where was your husband in all this, first and foremost?
He was there, but he was building his career. I mean, while I took care of the house and I took care of our daughter, he was there, but he was primarily focused on his career. And I at least gave him that feeling, I got this. It was not like he was absent or anything like that, but I handled say 70-80% of the share of her handling her emotions, dealing with her. I mean, 3 years probably, I was soaked in vomit because she would vomit every meal.
Okay. Oh, goodness.
He didn't have to deal with any of that,
Yeah.
right? He came
Yeah.
late, and I was taking care of our daughter. So,
But do you think caregiving is primarily a woman's job?
it
now-
should not be.
How would you have changed at that time?
I don't know because it's a little cloudy space because as a mother also, I don't know if I would have been okay if somebody is not doing the job well and whether, I don't know.
You don't want to lose control of the
Yeah, maybe-
situation.
You want to give your 100% for your child or the way you're dressing it or something. But I did. One time she got operated and she underwent some surgery, and I was there on the first day. My husband was present during the surgery and everything, all of that. But all the next few days, he couldn't just come to the hospital. He was working. The hospital was in Townside. We live in Mulund, so it was far for him and all that. But I was there throughout, morning, evening, night. I was there. We needed money also. And he got that part 100%. And whereas I had got this 100%. So I wasn't really complaining. And I don't know how we could have done this differently. I would have loved support when I wanted to prioritize my career. Because that time he could. So, and he had that runway, and when I had completed all of this really well, my daughter was on track and everything was fine, and he already had a head start in his career, and I wanted to focus on my life, my career. There was a huge disappointment when I didn't get that support. Why was that inequality there?
That's a huge imbalance.
Yes.
And it's very unfair.
Yes.
It is very difficult. So,
or how was all that effort not just seen or registered, just taken for granted?
Part of your job description
Exactly.
as a mother.
So who has designed this JD and what norms are we following here is the larger question. Like, why is that deep-seated conditioning in women that they have to do this? What if they choose, they don't? There's a lot of stigma because I was not active on those groups. If my daughter missed one school day and then I was not really following up on what did she miss, she'll figure it out. She'll go to school the next day. She'll see what she's missed. She'll catch up with the work. I'm not really monitoring all of that. And so many people felt that I was not like really a hands-on mom, or I didn't care about my daughter's school grades or her homework. So you have a lot of social stigma. You're categorized instantly. So if I wasn't taking care of my daughter, I think I would have been put in that bucket. Oh, she's just this, ambitious woman who just wants her life and doesn't care about. That same thing is not there for the man.
Absolutely.
So I think this is deep-rooted conditioning which we need to change, and we need to tell our daughters what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and change that.
To some extent, it's changing.
It is.
And even women buy into this narrative.
Yes. They feel that, if they make any changes, they'll rock the boat. So it's very fragile ecosystem they believe they're in.
And they are the ones responsible for the boat.
Yes.
No matter who's steering it.
Exactly.
They are the ones.
Exactly. So they just have to sit in that one place and adhere to the norms. Otherwise, it's tipping the balance. So there's huge fear and social stigma to make that change.
Coming back to this issue of starting your own venture, where do you get the money to start a venture?
Yeah, that's a big problem today. And, there are I hear about these schemes, like government has announced a scheme for women. Not once I have got any money from. Where are these schemes? Who is really benefiting from these schemes? So there is none. And the real challenge was that I didn't have any money. Where do I get the money? And my family wasn't willing to give me the money. Oh, today you want on this whim, you have no expertise and you are saying you want to do this business. You don't even know. But I had to put my foot down. I said, I didn't work for so many years. And if I was just a caregiver somewhere or doing exactly this, I would have got paid at least this much. I would have got 20,000 rupees a month, just nursing someone or whatever, like doing the home chores. I just need that money for these many years. And I just had to put my foot down that just for taking care and balancing this ecosystem, I deserve to be paid. And it was like, if I would have continued my practice, I would have earned this much.
And the irony is, if you had said, I want a diamond necklace, you would have probably got it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but not this.
Not this at all. I mean, it was tough to get that initial money and then to balance everything in that much money and generate money from that. So every time somebody gave me gifts or something like that, I would say, no, give me money so that I can put it in the business. So it was tough. Raising money is still a big challenge. When somebody who has never worked or in families, and if the woman wants to do something really, she does not have the capital. Because you subscribe to that choice, others still have not. And now they have to pay for your choice is worse. So still, if I feel women, if they decide to take up a job, it's still easier because you decide to step out of the house, you have a job, you have your salary coming in, whether it's less, more, you have something that's coming in and okay. But in this business, it's just about putting in money. When you will get the returns, you really don't know.
What age did you get married?
I got married very early. Again, that's a mistake I would never tell anyone to make. I got married at 22 and my daughter was born 26, 27. Today she is 21 complete. She's going to be 22 now. So we have a very friendly camaraderie and girls, I think, have that sense of sharing everything. And she's the only child because also in her formative years, she went through a lot of health challenges and she couldn't socialize too much. And also, I'm probably the solid presence in her life.
A big friend.
Yeah, I was a friend for a very long time. I had to literally wean her off and, that she has to make other friends and she has to spend time with other people. And that time came then later on. But till today, I think we are more like friends. We rarely have...
So you don't advise her to get married? She's turning 22.
No way. No way.
So what's the plan for Boba Cat now?
This is like my starting or stepping stone into the QSR, but come up with so many different formats and food and different concepts. And I think India is the most accepting right now.
So are there other bubble tea
There are many
restaurants?
Bubble tea players right now.
Tier 2, Tier 3 also?
I think so. And India essentially is also a hot place. So we are, we always steer ourselves towards cold beverages.
So there's optimism in the space.
And at the end of the day, it's iced tea or it's a shake. And it's just that cool quotient to carry a boba.
I find it much too sweet.
Me too. But our target audience is 13 to 25. And, when I would have this sweet boba, I would feel, what is this? But then I just rewinded my life. Like I told you, this cup of coffee, I would put 3 spoons of sugar. And it was normal for me. I had the metabolism, I had the energy, and I think I needed that sugar also. So that age is very forgiving. You get away with a lot of stuff, which today I cannot. I'm thinking, okay, with what has sugar, what has calories.
Yeah. But good for you. Good for you for starting something so new.
Yeah.
And all the best.
Thank you
for that. And all the best for the next QSR, whatever, burger or But I will be waiting for that. And
Yes.
hopefully it will be targeted to our age
It should be
profile.
universal. I feel it should be universal.
Okay. So look forward to that.
Thank you.
Rupali, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for this chat.
Thank
It
you
was
for having
really-
me here. You're starting your new podcast.
Yes,
I'm really
yes.
excited to hear stories of so many entrepreneurs and so many wonderful women.
Definitely. That's the whole point. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us a platform.
Hello and namaste. I hope you've been watching these conversations that I have brought to you with some very remarkable women in our country. The conversations, as you know, are about anything and everything that matters to a woman, and then, of course, by corollary, to society. If you are enjoying these conversations, do please like, share, subscribe so that others in your circle can also enjoy them. Thank you. Keep watching.